Hello, this is Arielle from Inconspicuous Bear, and I'll be narrating the 10-man version of the Heroic Garrosh Hellscream encounter in the Siege of Orgrimmar from a Guardian point of view. From a tank perspective, this encounter is pretty much unchanged from the normal version, other than the normal increased damage taken and so forth numbers. There's an entirely new phase, however, there are no tank-specific mechanic changes in that new phase, nor are there any tank-specific mechanic changes in any of the previous normal phases that you would encounter, 1 through 3. However, how your raid handles each of the mechanics now that they're basically more dangerous in Heroic, that's entirely up to your raid. I can't dictate that. What you'll see here is a 2 tank, 2 heal, 6 DPS makeup. There are a variety of different ways of doing this encounter in reality, ranging from 1 tank 2 heal, 1 tank 1 heal, 2 tank 2 heal. A variety of compositions will work here, and that's going to be up to your group to decide how you want to approach it. Now, that all being said, I will break down each phase for you so that you have an idea of what to expect and what abilities you need to save for what parts of the encounter and so forth. For phase 1, the only thing you really need to be aware of is that the adds will now have a fixate, which means they won't actually necessarily be attacking you at any given time. Instead, they'll be fixating on random people in your raid. We deal with this by just stacking up and killing them, but however you decide to handle them is going to be totally up to you. Remember that for the second wave of adds that comes out, definitely you want to have Typhoon so you can make sure that you can knock them into the Iron Star so you don't have to worry about killing them after. Generally, we stun them or what have you, however you want to handle them, but you don't have to worry about killing them when transitioning into Phase 2. The first Phase 2 intermission you will encounter is Jade Temple. Now, you'll see in this video, I go to the 2 left groups, the front left and the back left group with the 2 melee DPS. It is possible for a Guardian to interrupt all 3 mobs once with Bear Hug, Bash, and Skull Bash. However, we just use Disrupting Shout from Warrior and then single target interrupts on the second group of 3. You definitely want to use Berserk on the first group because it's crazy DPS, because you'll have a ton of vengeance going into that phase, so they'll all die really fast, especially with the ridiculous amount of crit we have. And then once you get to the second group, I start Incarnation there in order to get a lot of DPS to kill the adds. You could save Incarnation for the Annihilates, kind of depending on how your group's made up and whether or not you have the DPS to bring down that second group in time in order to beat the 25 energy timer. The Annihilates themselves will always be handled in the same way, regardless if you do 2 of them, i.e. Jade Temple and Terrace of the End of Spring, or only the Jade Temple one. You'll make sure that you get a buff. If you don't get a buff, you can still soak Annihilates, but you can only do it for a limited time. You can't do it for the entire duration. So if you get the damage reduction buff, what I do is I pop Survival Instincts for the first 12 seconds. Make sure you wait until the absolute last possible moment on the as upswing. To pop it, make sure you get 4 Annihilates as opposed to just 3, and then for the 4th one, or for the 5th one, once your Survival Instincts has worn off, use Might of Ursoc. You may or may not also have to use Barkskin, depending on how much health you have. I have about 1.15 mil fully buffed, so at that point, a Might of Ursoc is totally enough to keep me alive through the rest of the Annihilates. However, if you're sitting around 1 mil, that's going to be really, really close, and I would definitely recommend using Barkskin and then avoiding the rest of them. You'll probably be able to survive with very, very, very little health, but it's really just a matter of math, because when you're calculating how much effective health you need for the Annihilates, not only do you have to include the 3 million hit, but you also have to include the 750,000 AoE hit that happens to everybody, because you take both of them if you're soaking Annihilates. So make sure when you're trying to determine how much stamina you need, minimum anyway, that you're counting both of those, and that you're instantly shotgunning a friend's regeneration after Annihilate hits, or you'll probably find yourself in big trouble. Additionally, if you have Nature's Vigil or are taking it for this encounter, you will use it during the Annihilates. For reference, it does about 4.5 million healing, at least it did on my last attempt, or our last kill rather, which is a lot of healing in that situation. It's like full healing after one full Annihilate, like just by yourself, not requiring any other external healing. So that's a lot. So make sure that you're using Having Nature's Vigil there, plus the damage increase on top of the absolutely ridiculous amounts of vengeance you will have, is really good. Otherwise, if you're single tanking this encounter, single tanking and single healing, it's possible that you will actually end up using Heart of the Wild here instead, and spamming rejuvenations on everybody to keep everyone alive, or at least help your other solo healer keep everyone else alive. After Jade Temple, the rest of Phase 2 proceeds as normal, so you won't have any empowered abilities to deal with. Tank swap is normal. You want to swap generally on every 4 stacks, again, just like normal, so you don't diminishing returns taunt to the point where you can't taunt anyone, because that'd be kind of bad. This also maintains your vengeance level at a decent amount, so you get really good DPS out of it. I don't know what your raid's strategy is going to be, but as a Guardian, you pretty much just sit every Whirling Corruption because you have no reason to move out of it. Obviously, Frenzy Regeneration during the Corruption, so you don't die. I mean, it kind of goes without saying. I don't know whether or not your group is going to do Tirelessly Endless Spring or not. If you are, it's usually a good idea to Symbiosis a Priest. This is literally the one time in the entire expansion where Symbiosis as a Priest is a good idea. This will grant you Fear Ward, which you can drop on yourself to prevent yourself from getting feared from the little shadowy bomb thingies that go flying everywhere in Terrace. If you don't do Terrace, then you obviously don't have to worry about that. You just kind of sit in the back and chill and do nothing. Otherwise, if you do Terrace, definitely make sure if possible, you have Fear Ward on only for that one intermission, because that's the only time you'll use it, and you'll want to go back to getting something else afterwards. Otherwise, the intermission pretty much operates the same way. Get ads, kill ads. The ads are pretty nasty, so you may want to pull them in 2 groups. I don't know, kind of depends on what your raid wants to do. Other than that, second half of Phase 2, after Terrace at the end of the spring, if you skip it, actually either way, it doesn't matter if you skip it or not, you will start getting empowered Whirling Corruptions. Again, as a Guardian, you can just sit these. Barkskin will be up for every Whirling Corruption, so use Barkskin, and then basically sit in it. If you get a pool, you don't have to move. If a pool lands on top of you, or an ad spawns on top of you, it's Frenzy Regen after it spawns, you'll be at full health, and you can just kill the ad really quickly. I like to use Berserk, usually on the empowered Whirling Corruption that happens in Phase 3 to make sure the ads die really fast, but we'll talk about Phase 3 in a second. Otherwise, Phase 2 is just kind of up in the air, exactly what you're going to have to deal with. Totally depends on what your strat is. The rest of the fight carries on as normal until the transition into Phase 3. At that point, I use Incarnation and Second Potion to get as much DPS in on the boss as possible. Phase 3 is pretty much the same as it is on normal. The only difference is that you want to avoid getting an explosion, at least a very bad explosion, during Whirling Corruptions if at all possible. So usually try and taunt around 3 to 4 stacks max. Again, still sit the Whirling Corruptions. You really want to try and only get 1 in Phase 3. 2 is usually really bad. The first one is pretty easy to handle. You just use Zerk and Nature's Vigil, not only pop heals on the raid, but to make sure you kill any ads spawning you as quickly as possible. Empowered ads are a real pain in the ass. Just got to make sure you have Savage Defense up, because their attacks can be dodged, and also they hit as shadow damage, not physical damage, which means you take a lot of damage, especially if they're empowered twice or something. Just make sure that they die really fast, if at all humanly possible, and then you'll just get into Phase 4 and it'll be easy peasy. What you'll be doing in Phase 4 really depends on what your raid strategy is and what your role will be for that part of the encounter. You could either be kiting the Iron Star, or you could be tanking the boss. Some people trade off, some people don't. If you're one tanking, you're always not going to be kiting, that sort of thing. If you're going to be tanking the boss, again, where you put him in terms of the encounter is entirely up to your raid strategy, but basically you'll tank him, and then when the bombardment happens, you'll move him, and then you'll sit still again, and then you'll move him again, and that's pretty much it. He hits pretty hard in Phase 4, but it's not really anything to worry about. If you're going to be kiting the Iron Star, it's a bit different. Generally, I will help soak the first Malice. With the second Malice, I will sit out, make sure I'm outside of the Malice ring, so I don't take any stacks before I will actually be getting in with the group and helping soak it during the bombardment. So the bombardment will start, we'll move into the middle, spawn an Iron Star, everyone will leave. During the first one, usually I pop Might of Ursoc and Barkskin to make sure that I don't die to Malice ticks. And then once the Iron Star spawns, I immediately shift into cat form and start cutting it away. This is the one instance that you could possibly justify taking Displacer Beast. You don't need to, obviously. You could if you wanted. It's totally up to you. I don't. I just run with Feline Swiftness for this encounter. Again, that's a choice you'll have to make for yourself. And then depending on where the boss is and a whole bunch of other factors, how fast you're going, how far away the Iron Star is, you will generally turn around and go back to the boss with the Iron Star somewhere between 85 and 90 energy. It 100% depends on where the star is relative to the boss. If the boss is really far away from the star, you'll have to turn around earlier. If the star is really close to the boss, you have to turn around sooner. Or you have to turn around later. 100% depends on what's going on in the encounter at that given time. The Iron Star will run over, it'll hit the boss, he'll get interrupted. You may need to grab any ads that spawn, or the Garrosh tank can do that. They're not really that threatening, just something to be aware of. And then I help soak the Iron Star, or help soak the malice that happens during the second bombardment. For this one, a Survival Instincts of Barkskin, to make sure I don't die. And then, if there is a second Iron Star, if you need a second Iron Star, you'll need to repeat that process again of kiting it around. Generally, at this point in the expansion, you shouldn't need a second Iron Star. You should be able to just kill a boss. But that's really entirely up to how good your raid's DPS is. In terms of tanking items for this encounter, obviously stay with the tank meta. It's really good damage reduction just in general. You could, I guess, go with the DPS meta if you really felt confident, but for progression in this encounter, I definitely recommend the tank meta. However, the flip side of that is I cannot, in good conscience, recommend using the tank cloak, at least in 10-man. There is actually literally nothing that will kill you. That is not 100% your fault. Use the DPS cloak. It's really good. Does a lot of damage. Also, each individual attack from the DPS cloak triggers Nature's Vigil, so there's a lot of healing too. Something to keep in mind. For talent choice in this encounter, they're really pretty cut and dry. Tier 1, you can either go with Swiftness or Charge. I've mentioned before that there is an argument to be made for Displacer Beast if you're kiting. I personally haven't really found a need for it, which is why I prefer to use Feline Swiftness for kiting or Charge otherwise, just because the movement in Jade Temple is actually really important. Every GCD you can save in that intermission is really, really important. Tier 2, I mean, Ysera's Gift. Snaring Ward is worthless, Renewal is worthless, which leaves Ysera's Gift. So there you go. Tier 3, this is going to sound like a broken record, but Typhoon. I mentioned that earlier in this video. You want to have it purely for Phase 1. Every other town is completely worthless. Tier 4, Incarnation, because it's better than the other two choices by like a huge, like gigantic mile. So there you go. Mighty Bash, Tier 5, only for Jade Temple. It's also can be kind of useful for mind controls before they become empowered, but generally you just hit them and interrupt them, and it doesn't matter. And then you save a GCD, and you don't. The people that you stun don't waste time after getting out of the mind control. So there you go. Tier 6, Heart of the Wild, maybe if you're solo tanking and solo healing. Otherwise, Nature's Vigil 100% of the time. Nature's Vigil you will use on every intermission and every second whirl, if that makes sense. So you will use it, at least I use it at the very start of the encounter, during Annihilates in Jade Temple, during World 2, in Phase 2. We sit toes, so we don't nothing to do there. And then I do not use it during the Empowered Whirl in Phase 2. We only get one of those. I use it during the Empowered Whirl in Phase 3, just for the off-healing, which is really good at that point. And then I use it again going into, or at the very start of Phase 4, because before the first bombardment is the only time you'll actually be able to freely DPS the boss. Other than that, you'll be kiting or killing ads or something. Now, normally I would include a Guardian tips in air quotes thing at the end of this video. However, I've kind of already talked about that throughout the video and in each of the different phase discussions, so I'm not going to rehash it here. I just want to say good luck on Garrosh Hellscream, and see you in Warlords of Draenor. Okay, that was kind of ridiculous. MCs.
Sure.
Turn. Or, Cloak proc. Or 1. I think that was like literally 200k DPS difference on my end.
Third. Divisive.
War.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna want to slow down a bit.
I'm just stopping.
Yeah.
Execute. Alright, I'm done.
Perfect.
I cast AG, but I had to attack. Didn't know what to do. Maybe. Well, I want to press buttons other than damage ones.
Bear deeps. Alright, we've got good push going into phase 3. Basically replicate what we did before, we'll be fine. MCs. Death.
War.
Oral's happening, get out. Okay, careful, be careful on DPS. Stop, 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 stop. We got MCs. Valk. I'll get Thurn. Hero and go. Nice. Gonna have MCs in a second.
Stand.
Churd. Dispelled. And here comes the whirl. Got it. MCs get war.
Got war.
I got war.
This crane needs to get out. You know.
Fine. Next mouse in 5. Me, Sanch, Falcon War.
Ow.
Okay, mouse group spread. Should all be running to the boss.
It's a tiny bit further than normal, but not much. Further away from you.
Should be fine.
Yeah, I think so.
Coming into the boss now.
We got
War
one,
will go
two,
right.
We've got 3 ads.
couple, yeah.
Back tight.
Me, Thurn, and War.
Yeah, I'll stay on the
Tide.
right hand side.
Gas star.
Fuck, got a star.
Tied.
I'll take it. It's down.
Take it. Carry share.
I'm just gonna run away with it. Up
Fuck,
scanners.
I'm dead.
Cool down. Cool down quick.
Sonia, grab the ads.
You ready for cooldown? Ready? Ready. 3, 2, 1. I'm dead. Oh, it ran away.
Hand a mouse, hand a mouse.
I'll step up. Soul step.
Spread out and kite this one. Bombardment's over. Stack back up.
Stack quick.
Burn, 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 burn.
Okay, so this is not the most appropriate
Good job.
outfit.